I was standing in front of my father's grave, who had been the CEO of a big company, and after he passed my brother-in-law Patrick, he inherited a whopping $500 million, while I got an old mini truck. Patrick was proud of his good fortune and mockingly said, "I have the company and the entire estate in my grasp. That mini truck is suitable for you, but to me, that small truck was more than a car." When I turned on the engine after carefully examining it, I noticed that the navigation system had a destination selected. "What is this?" I asked, holding on with a firm but sensitive grip. I took the wheel. Hello to all of you. My name is Frank, and I am 45 years old. Now I stand before a large coffin where my father rests peacefully. My connection with my father has never been easy. I took a different route, but he built a construction company from the ground up. Right after college, I moved away from home to follow my childhood ambition of becoming a teacher. After this decision, which led to many heated arguments, we didn't talk much for a while. Despite our differences, I didn't hate my father. Managing the family business couldn't come at the expense of my personal objectives. I felt a lot of responsibility as the eldest son, but I also felt awful about not living up to my father's expectations. This guilt prevented me from visiting my parents' home. My sister Sophia was the person my mother relied on to update my father about my life. Sophia and her husband would often arrange trips or send expensive gifts, pretending they were from me for my father's birthday or their anniversary. Each and every time, Sophia would encourage me to press on. I'm hoping. His heart must feel lonely. Often when Sophia said something, I would shake my head. But one day I received the heartbreaking news that my father had cancer. This is what I heard. I immediately quit my work and went back to my family's home. I realized that no matter how much I disagreed with my father, life itself was more significant. I decided to go back home, take care of my sick father, and teach at a local school. At first, my father was taken aback by my return, but he quietly accepted it. I didn't say much either. I just stayed with him, taking care of him. Every time he needed it, he would thank me gently, and I found some solace in those words. Regretfully, my father's fight against his illness was over. The last chapter of his life ended peacefully with me. Sophia and our mother were with him. Although we couldn't know what he was thinking in his last moments, we nevertheless prayed that his soul was at peace, despite our expectations. We were all profoundly affected by his departure. Mom. Both Sophia and my young nephew Randy were in tears. My brother-in-law Patrick was the only one who showed no emotion. During the funeral arrangements, he asked coldly, "Is he finally dead now?" Oh. I was proud of myself for keeping my cool and not reacting angrily to Patrick. Instead, I focused on getting my father's funeral planned. This kept me busy and helped distract me from the discomfort. I ignored Patrick's angry comments and made sure everything was done properly for the burial. Patrick and I had never had a positive relationship, and it only grew worse with time. Nevertheless, despite all, I maintained my focus during this challenging time. I greatly respected Patrick's skills when I first met him because he was a very successful worker at my father's company. When Patrick married my sister Sophia, I felt like I had gained a real brother because he was 5 years older than me, and he was a role model. Prior to his marriage to Sophia, I regularly reached out to Patrick for help on a range of matters, and he always listened to me sympathetically. One of our main discussions was whether or not I should join the family business. Like Patrick would say, "You should live your own life. Frank, you're on your own. No one knows what the best course of action in life is. Thus, decision-making is essential. You won't regret it later." I was encouraged by his comments. At business school, I switched my major from management to what I really wanted to study at the Faculty of Education. As time went on, Patrick and Sophia moved in together after getting married. 22 years have passed since then, and my father and I are no longer as close. I passed up the chance to close that gap and continued living my life. But I found out about my father's illness. I dropped everything and ran home. Patrick no longer gave me the warm greeting I had formerly gotten. Now he seemed uncomfortable with me. When we were alone, Like Patrick would say, cold. You came back right away after learning that he was sick, didn't you? But there's nothing you'll inherit. His comments surprised me, and I was unable to respond. What do you say? Don't act like that. It could be a coincidence, but I don't know. But even if you want to run the company now, the future leader has already been selected. Patrick's words startled me, and I answered more loudly than I intended to. No, it's not that. I didn't come back for the job. When I realized I hadn't been a decent son, I wanted to apologize to Dad. It was late, yet Patrick dismissed me. Your pretense is not necessary for me. It sounds like a drama on television. Sophia likes things like that, but were all those gifts? You sent a brief message to make yourself appear good in front of him. It's simply not true. I tried to explain, but Patrick had already made up his mind and could not trust me. Furthermore, his comments appeared to be a slight against Sophia, and for the first time, I sensed a significant distance between us. Ever since that incident, I started to get really upset with Patrick. He started making fun of me in public, regardless of how hard you tried to win him over. Go back to where you belong and take care of your troubled students, and don't make me laugh, he'd say. At first, I carefully considered how I appeared to others and how they saw me, but Patrick's comments made it clear that he was more concerned with himself than our father. His behavior often seemed insulting to his father-in-law and his wife, Sophia. I started to believe that Patrick's marriage to Sophia was primarily an effort to inherit my father's fortune and company. He rarely went to see my father and didn't help with his care when he was sick. My only option was to work hard to protect my father's company. Patrick seemed professional most of the time, but his real goal was to avoid controversy. He rarely took care of his own son, preferring to spend his weekends playing golf, which he claimed was for work. He asserted that he wanted his son to develop a range of skills so that he might eventually take over the business, even though he left all driving and housework to Sophia. This caused Sophia considerable annoyance. Patrick would hold her hand and say passionately, "I'm giving my all for his sake. The time has come to do everything it takes to achieve outcomes. Let's work together to overcome this challenge." Even though she seemed reluctant, Sophia usually just agreed since she didn't want to face him. Because Patrick was skilled at pretending to be the perfect husband in her eyes, Sophia trusted him. He probably let me see his true self because he thought I was like him. After I got used to Patrick's jeering, I didn't mind it as much. However, when our beloved father passed away, I was heartbroken. I was feeling so hopeless and empty. But Patrick seemed upset about our father's declining health. I had the unmistakable feeling that he had been waiting for this. This thought made me frustrated and depressed. After our father passed away, Patrick inherited the majority of our father's large wealth. Like Sophia and I, he was entitled to the inheritance, even though he was merely a son-in-law. The majority of the company's shares and a sizable wealth were left to my father in his testament. I was so taken aback by this unexpected development that words cannot describe how I felt, despite the fact that I was my father's biological child. I thought the three of us would split the bequest equally, but Patrick ended up taking home almost all of it. All I received was an old little truck that my father used to publicly cherish. Patrick seemed surprised, but alone. He laughed as he spoke. "You just got this little truck after you drove all day and night from the city to this little town and took care of Dad? Ironically, all you have left as an inheritance is this small truck, and the company is now mine. It's like a comedy." He left the room with a sly smile. Feeling empty within, I gripped the small truck's keys. My family members attempted to cheer me up, but the icy metal made me confront the harsh reality. Keep your head up. Dad had reasons for it. He didn't mean to hurt your feelings. That truck has always fascinated Dad. His favorite vehicle was that one. You must have been adored by him. Despite their kind words, I was too hurt to respond. It was quite irritating that Patrick, who seemed to be waiting for my father to die, got almost everything, even though I knew that a parent's love is not determined by what you inherit. The aim was not the money. It was the pain of seeing a man like that suffer from my father's labors. I felt powerless to change the situation. Reaching for the truck's key, I decided to take care of the little truck my father gave me. It seemed to have a deeper meaning. I thought cleaning the truck would help me process my feelings. I replaced my father in the driver's seat after thoroughly washing the truck with a hose. They start the engine. I noticed something strange on the navigation system. The only visible path was a thick blue one. It's odd that it does more than just show my location. Why is there a destination specified in the navigation system? I wanted to know why this usually only happens when a specific route is followed. I glanced at the destination on the screen, but it only displayed coordinates rather than a precise address. It would take around an hour to drive the small vehicle. I didn't think much about it. I put the truck in first gear and left the house an hour later after a delightful drive. I came to what seemed like a house. It came as a surprise. The modest, simple house in front of me seemed so different from the larger houses in my hometown. It was warm and inviting. I couldn't see or hear anyone else in the quiet area. I got out of the taxi and stood in front of the house, a little confused. Despite the lack of signage indicating this location, it seemed as though the GPS system had guided me here for a reason. With hesitation, I rang the bell as the door slowly opened. I was surprised to see the individual I did. "Mama, I've been waiting," she said. "Why are you here, Frank?" "Come in, dear." "Mom? And why?" This place was programmed into Dad's navigation system. She followed me inside and said, "Come in and unwind first, and I'll explain everything." I found the interior cozy and simple with simply the essentials. My mother made some tea and then quietly started to explain. "In actuality, this was your father's top secret doubt. I'd never heard of Dad owning a place like this either." "This is our secret spot," she uttered in surprise. I said, "When we needed some privacy or some quiet time, we came here. If we ever got into a small fight, it was our rule to come here and settle down." "You didn't know it, did you?" I was stunned and deep in thought. I had no idea that such a family rule existed. She continued, "Your father also wanted you to have this." After saying this, she gave me a brown packet. It swelled a little, as if it held something important. I decided to read the letter that I had been sent. "Frank, I have gone through unthinkable pain and given you a lot of trouble over the years. I'm truly sorry from the bottom of my heart." The letter conveyed my father's appreciation for me and his reflections on his past mistakes. "Even though we're both stubborn, I was quite taken aback when you came back after I fell ill." He said, "A son has the right to choose his own path in life, and your mother frequently tells me that it was your choice to leave home. I truly appreciate your assistance and concern for the family, but I was unable to express it effectively because I'm not very good at articulating my feelings." I cried because it was the most sincere thing my father had ever spoken to me. Since Patrick was mentioned in the letter as well, I must admit that my ire toward him grew over time. I sensed his true nature despite his skill with words and ability to calm people. I suspected that he was trying to claim possession of the house by acting slyly. I was too worn out from work and taking care of you all to notice his cunning actions. But I know Patrick now. I believe these suspicions were correct. The letter continued, "I don't plan on giving you the company if something unexpected happens. I left your mother a substantial amount of money. This is to ensure that neither you nor Sophia will be in need. Please accept it." Until the letter was finished. I looked at my mother. She only gave the brown packet a quick glance, so I reached for it and made sure everything was in my mother's name. She began speaking firmly. "If I transferred the accounts into your and Sophia's names, that would be considered a gift under tax laws. If it is mentioned in the will, maybe Patrick will try to accept it. Your father gave me this money in secret when he was still alive so that Patrick wouldn't interfere. Now I want to give it to you and Sophia as a live gift." She explained everything to me, but I was still trying to understand the whole point. The amount of money listed in the account book she showed me was much larger than I could have imagined. I had never seen that much money. It meant a lot to me that my father had left this for me, not because of the amount, but because it showed that he genuinely cared about me and not only Patrick, who was considered his heir. I was profoundly impacted by this. I knew Dad always had our best interests in mind, even though we didn't show our emotions very often. I sincerely appreciate all of the gifts you have given me, and I want everything I entrusted to your mother to be passed on to you, he stated in his letter. Before I knew it, tears were streaming down my cheeks. I struggled to keep my emotions in check for a long time. I was completely wrong to think that my father didn't really understand me. He always understood and valued me. Since he knew I would take excellent care of that old little truck, he most likely trusted me with it. Mom, I said, I truly feel awful that I can't do more for Dad. However, my mother soothed me with a gentle smile. She seemed to sympathize with my regret, saying that when pain is apparent, it's common to feel like you could have done more. But you were really loving and happy with your father. You were his greatest pride. Her comments caused me to start crying once more, but they also gave me the courage to make a wise decision. I refused to let someone like Patrick, who had wished for my father's death, take over his company. I decided to silently protest and come up with a planned plan without letting Patrick know that I had earned a good deal of money. The first step was to get in touch with the business executives my father had trusted to help build a foundation for their support. They agreed to help me carry on my father's legacy. Their answers made it clear that my father had never spoken poorly of me. During the reading, my mother and sister's calm manner distracted Patrick from me. In front of Patrick, they continued doing the same thing, giving him the appearance that he had succeeded, and he disparaged me arrogantly. Hey, after being left a poor man by your father, do you still intend to live here? He sneered, I'm the new president. Now accept your loss and head back home. As he spoke these remarks, Patrick would dismissively wave his hand as if he were chasing a tiny fly away. Since assuming the role of CEO, Patrick's arrogant behavior has led to conflict within the company. Despite having a crucial job, he ignored his duties and mistreated his staff. This resulted in numerous problems and the departure of numerous skilled employees who were unhappy with his leadership. Patrick didn't review his approach because he was still overconfident. As the company's problems increased, he would publicly announce decisions without seeking input from others, stating those who cannot understand my superior vision might as well quit immediately. Patrick seemed to lose interest in the company since he chose to spend money and live a luxurious lifestyle. When I initially met him, he seemed like a wonderful guy, talented, and even appreciated by my dad. Why had he changed so much? My mother used to cry every night, but she didn't tell the children about it. I was unable to witness the company fail. I was planning my next move in solitude. That day, I finally did something about it. I waited for Patrick at work after getting out of bed early. When he initially walked into the president's office, he was taken aback to discover me seated there. What the devil are you doing? Why are you sitting there? Is it possible to get this person to go? He insisted. Who should be leaving? Are you? I replied calmly. What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind? I used the resources our father left us, and Patrick viewed me as a troublesome bug. I bought the majority of the business's stock. After an extraordinary general meeting of shareholders, you were formally removed from your position as president. Patrick, I regret to inform you that you are no longer company president. Wait a minute. Do you not realize that he murmured incoherently, repeating things that didn't make sense? I currently own 2/3 of this company's shares. You thought the inheritance was only an old mini-truck, but it turned out to be a source of revenue. When Patrick tried to elaborate on the details of the hideout, I avoided his questions and changed the subject, which only made him more agitated. The game is over. Now leave this place. I handed him many documents and explained politely. As Patrick flipped through them, his face went white. What is this? He asked. These are the extraordinary general meeting of shareholders minutes and your termination notice. I explained. Patrick lost his rage, screamed, and smashed the papers in his hands. You think this is going to last? I'll bring legal action. Continue the legal action. We have beneficial justifications for our actions. I responded calmly. Why have you been after this enterprise and the old man's wealth from the start? According to Patrick, it was merely envy. I'll be direct with you. Patrick, have you been abusing company property for personal gain and signing leases for your own benefit? I asked. What if I have? What is it to you? When Patrick responded, his face became white with shock. How did you know that? He stammered as I listed his offenses, including stealing laptops and other business-related equipment. It was difficult for Patrick to respond. Office-appropriate computers and televisions are being utilized for personal purposes at home. Isn't that reason enough to act? I went on. Patrick tried desperately to defend himself. You know that, but how and why? He asked, his lips trembling. I kept looking at him as I went on. You should have been more aware of your responsibilities. Did you become complacent when you thought you had all control? I had been questioning the organization's officials about Patrick's actions. After our father passed away, Patrick became more arrogant. He used to at least pretend to respect other people, but once he was elected president, he began to assign his responsibilities to others and even fell asleep in his office. This strategy caused many loyal employees who respected my father to quit. His acts irritate me. Patrick, distressed by the situation, questioned my managerial abilities, emphasizing that I was incapable of carrying out the responsibilities of a manager. Think about how you have never worked a day in this company. How can someone who has never held a corporate management position become president? It is impossible to trust someone like you with management. Patrick argued. You're absolutely right. I admitted that I have no plans to become the president of this company. I'm just sitting in this chair to give you a symbolic message. In actuality, a new president has already been elected by another board of directors and is carrying out their responsibilities. Patrick stood stunned, his mouth hanging open and his eyes wide. He was astonished by the turn of events and was sure I was running for president, so he had planned to replace him. I have made it clear time and time again that I am not interested in being president. All I want to do is keep the business going and pay tribute to my father. All his life, he built. I explained. Who would believe such fancy talk? Patrick fired back. He thought that I only cared about the wealth and status that came from our father, not his true worth. After my reply, Patrick trembled with anger for a moment, then calmed himself. Now that this is finished, do you think you can just enjoy it? He sneered and rushed out of the president's office. That night, something unexpected happened. When Sophia threw divorce papers at Patrick, their marriage came to an end. His wrongdoing at the corporation finally led to his termination. The new president was chosen by the directors who respected my father and were dedicated to protecting what he had built. My sister and mother concurred with me that someone who would continue my father's legacy should head the business. Sophia was preparing for the divorce on the day she brought up the subject, and I was coordinating Patrick's release with the attorneys. Even the sound of her hurt voice filled the air in the house. What makes you abandon me now? Is it because you don't care about me anymore and I'm not president anymore? Patrick asked, maintaining her firmness while maintaining her poise. Sophia stated, There's no point in talking about betrayal. You were the one who betrayed our relationship from the start. You didn't love me. You loved the president's daughter title. Ultimately, you tried to take everything from our father for yourself, ignored our home, did not help raise our children, and had no concern for our sick father. Now is the time for you to handle the consequences. Patrick didn't respond to what Sophia said. She had endured a tremendous deal of suffering because she worried for her children's and the company's future. Thankfully, however, our father's legacy provided her with a solid financial base to raise her children. After the divorce, we planned to live a peaceful life, free from arguments with our mother and sister. We were simply concerned that Patrick may exact revenge, but he was now broke. After losing a significant amount of money to an investment scam, he was also in debt. In this scam, a man posing as a representative of a brokerage firm was actually a fraudster. Being convinced caused Patrick to lose a lot of money. The story served as an example of how people might exploit others who unexpectedly become affluent. Now, Patrick was facing financial repercussions as a result of his actions. Meanwhile, I enjoyed the days I spent taking care of my mother. I continued to live a peaceful, joyful life and work at the tutoring school. Furthermore, my mother and I took pleasure in caring for my nephew Randy, who cherished us. His presence brought joy to our daily existence. When I grow up, I'll be president like Grandpa. Randy spoke with the innocence of a child's dream in his voice. This made us all grin, and my mother even broke down in tears. Sophia and I looked at each other knowingly, our smiles displaying love and sympathy. Even though you might say that now, I wouldn't be surprised if you choose to become a teacher while still a college student. I teased him gently as I recalled similar comments I had made before that had caused everyone to laugh. But I'm not very good at studying. So perhaps I won't be a good teacher, he said, his forehead furrowed solemnly. His candor made this even more endearing and brought on more laughter since it made us realize we were truly living in the moment and loving our family. This time, there was a wonderful sense of satisfaction and warmth in the laughs.